Welcome to the EdTech series of Keynote 180, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Saleem. In this series of interviews, we explore the ways technology is shaping our teaching and learning. In each episode, we take one particular facet of educational technology and we explore that particular facet in depth with its experts. Today, our focus is on robotics. I'm honored to have with me someone who has a passion for teaching foreign languages. She's a lifelong learner of educational technology. She holds a doctorate in educational technology. And her work on robotics has been presented at countless conferences nationwide. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Erica Creado.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
Very well. Good to see you too. And before I get into something more substantial and something dense,
Yes.
tell me, yesterday it was a great day. The weather was wonderful, right?
It was perfect. We were due for a good day.
And tell me, what is the most interesting thing that you did yesterday?
Yesterday was busy. I don't know that I can share. I'll see. Well, my mornings are always interesting. I go for a good workout. And then after that, I just spend the day running errands, not as interesting, and celebrating one of my relatives' birthdays. So it's a beautiful, good, happy day.
It was a fantastic day yesterday. And you want to know, how I started my day?
How did you?
Normally, weekends, we were supposed to wake up late. But yesterday, my dear son, he woke us up very early because he had to go for a robotics competition.
Really?
Yes, and that meant, that now we are up, at 5:30, 6 o'clock, so now we can go back to sleep. So myself and my dear bride, we ended up sitting at a Starbucks for 4 hours because it was such a beautiful weather, and in the sun, we sat there for almost 4 hours. And that's where I went through the material for. There was an interview which I had to do yesterday and today with you. So I was able to do some work and take in the sun also at that time.
Beautiful. Yes, I couldn't get enough of the sun. It was such a gorgeous day.
All right. So again, before I get into our topic of the day, which is about robotics. Tell me, I understand you are also involved in Latino culture, and tell me what are your activities there, how you're involved in that.
Well, I am Puerto Rican, and I've been a Spanish teacher for many years now. I don't know, a long time, it seems. And so I'm in, not only it's my culture, but it's also what I teach, and I try to keep up to date with the community activities so that I can bring it into my classroom. Like, for example, this past month, it was Black History Month, and I made sure to include some activities related to Afro-Latinos. So that's what I try to do in terms of the Latino community. Try to keep up to date with what's happening, books that are coming out, to then incorporate them in my lessons.
Oh, beautiful. And I understand you also have a sort of a vlog.
Yes, I call it.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, a blog. It started as a blog, BLOG, several years ago, and where I would just write my thoughts on a particular topic. But I realized that sometimes it was too long to read, and also I think people react better to video, and so I decided to turn it into BLOG. And what it is that a video log. Every other week, I post a short video, less than 5 minutes, in which I usually share a strategy for world language classroom, or if I was at a conference or I was doing something in particular, sometimes I do talk about robots. I share that, and I include some resources that I have as part of my website. So and that's what the blog is about.
Where our audience can go to access your website and
Yes, thank you.
your blog?
It's my first and last name, so it's Ericka Collado, ERICKACOLLADO.com. And then you will find more information. Our viewers can find more information about my background in terms of my professional background, the work that I do, conferences, and there is a page that has all the blog posts.
Oh, okay. I'm noting down this so that we could add this information to the end of our conversation, and people would be able to see as a footnote and also as a slide in between our conversation. They will be able to access your website right there. So now, getting to the meat of our conversation, tell me, what are what they call the 21st century skills that we can teach through your area of interest, robots?
Yes, I was thinking when it comes to 21st century skills. I remember years ago we would say, what are the 21st century skills for students to learn technology, for them to be able to incorporate technology in the classroom. Now what we're talking about is to merge skills, content with skills. So what it looks like is that the lessons are student-centered, that they are more in charge of their learning process, and they make decisions, problem solve. So they practice all these skills. And when it comes to robotics or incorporating robots in a lesson, regardless of the subject, it is through the merge of that content and the skills that they can acquire through either designing or just driving a robot that we can foster those 21st century skills.
If I could just add to this, my son, as I said, even today, he's at a robotics competition. So he's
awesome.
He was out there for a robotics competition 2 days in a row. One thing that I have found him talking about, that he has to work with the whole team.
Exactly.
And when he's with the whole team, that requires a lot of patience to work with his peers. He has to listen to them. He has to let them speak. He has to let them sometime, take the lead. And himself, he should take a back seat on this. So, do you think that these are soft skills that we talk about?
Exactly.
These soft skills are students also learn because they are not running these robots individually. And I understand most of these robotics activities are conducted in groups of students. Is it true?
Yes, that's the case. When there's a couple of things I want to mention. For example, the work that I do with children in first grade through fifth grade, we use robots that are already built. The idea is to get them used to them. But for example, in middle school and high school, we have a robotics team, and we've had the opportunity to bring the children to meet the robotics team. And it's exactly what we learn, is exactly what you're talking about. It's all about teamwork. So what I try to do is, because of my after school program, and we're trying to prepare them for that in case that they want to continue, is to integrate the soft skills. The idea that they need to be able to listen to one another, communicate clearly, have patience, sharing, with the little ones, that translate into sharing is not always easy, because yes, I've also seen when you have in teams, sometimes two people are maneuvering or driving two parts of the same robot. So communication is key.
And collaboration automatically.
Exactly. And it's not easy. You and I both know, we all know that it's not easy. We want to do what we want to do.
Right.
It requires skills and practice and negotiation. And also, from what I understand, these are what, going forward into, preparing these students for the workforce, whether it's in robotics or not. Companies are looking for people that are able to communicate and collaborate and bring their differences and, create something. So it's important that we foster these soft skills.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell us, when we think of a robot, we think of like a robot from Honda. There was a man, was walking around.
Yes.
And taking orders from its operator and then performing those tasks. What other shapes and forms of robots are used mostly in classrooms? Instead of just there's like a man, a little male-looking robot running around.
Exactly.
What do the robots look like usually in classrooms?
Well, I just want to share. It's interesting you mentioned, because the definition. If we look up the definition of robot, is as simple as a something mechanical, right? An apparatus that has the shape of a human or an animal, and can move, based on certain directions. So even one of those little toys that have a knob and you turn the knob, the name escapes my mind right now, and I wrote an article about this, that is a robot. So those, for example, I use in the preschool classroom sometimes to tell a story where that incorporates different animals, and the children are able to turn the knob and clockwise, and it moves around. It is a robot. So as simple as that. Then you have the more sophisticated ones, where that are, I don't know, we can go into, there's always coming out the Dash and the Spheros and the Cubetos. I'm learning each week. I'm learning of a new.
So these are all different. These are all different names of the robots that you use? Okay.
They're different brands.
These are commercially available. These things are commercially available.
Exactly.
And what if let's say if I'm an administrator and I want to buy one of these things, where do I go? Do I go to Amazon? Where do I buy these robots from?
Well, there's so many, and the resources are such that first you would have to start with, what are your goals? What exactly are you looking for in the classroom? So if it's something like a STEM lesson where you want students to learn how to build a robot and incorporate engineering skills, maybe you want to look into the Lego and the Lego kits and the We-Dos and EV3s, right? If it's something like foreign languages, for instance, that was my case. That's how I started. And I was looking to incorporate technology, to look for a way of incorporate coding, of engaging children. I used the Bluebot, which is easy programmable. So I would use it for literacy. And as a matter of fact, in the school that I work, after I started using it, some of the teachers started using it also for language arts. So for mystery words, spelling, where the robot becomes a tool for the student to solve a problem. The word become the creation of a word or phrase becomes a problem to solve. And so then that's another type of robot you can use the Cubeto. I recently learned that you could do that. And there's different websites. And yes, you can go through Amazon. But, so first is the goal. What do you want to achieve? And then from there you get started and
That's
do
very interesting. I've never thought, that you can use robot to teach a language.
Yes.
And tell me a little more about this, because I'm thinking robot performing physical functions. But you are saying that we can teach language. Are we talking about, teaching language through the coding, or we are talking about teaching language, like verbal language?
Well, both.
Okay.
You can use the tools, like I said, the Bluebot and the Cubeto. A colleague of mine. So what I have done with the Bluebot, which is it's a very cute robot that has buttons on top, and it goes in certain directions. So it's very simple: forward, back, right, or left. So it's used with a mat. And for example, you can use letters, and you create codes in the target language, and going forward in Spanish would be derecho, para atrás. You as a teacher, you create this, and now the student can do several activities. They come up with their own codes. Then they share out, or they work in groups. This is particularly what I did. And they have to, if they work in groups of 3, they have to use the language because they have to say the codes aloud, and or they will read the codes to the classmates. So it becomes a collaborative activity. The beauty is one of my favorite lessons, because sometimes the students that are extremely shy, that don't want to raise their hand, and particularly if they like robots, they're immersed in the activity, and all of a sudden you hear them speak. So that was very rewarding. So that's an example. Another example is for the robot, I want to say the Now robot. Am I saying it right? It's the one that it speaks, and you can program. That comes in different languages, and that becomes. It could be to a degree like an assistant to the teacher in the classroom, and you program it to have. You can program it to have certain lessons, songs, so that the children sing along with the robot. The other part of it is that because you can code in the language for more advanced students, they can actually program the robot in the target language. So there are options for foreign languages in terms of incorporating robot. That could be pretty cool.
Now, I understand robots have their own programming languages that you use, and Scratch, Python, and all that. So what do you suggest for different grade levels? Let's say for elementary and then middle school, high school. What languages do you suggest that are appropriate to be used with the teaching of robotics? Should we start with something simpler at the elementary level in robotics, and then move on to more complex programming languages? And if so, what would be those? What that sequence would look like, and what would be those languages?
Well, there's two parts of the question. In terms of the programming language, there's tons of it, right? There's so many, and it's a very sophisticated area of programming. But in terms of articulating what to use, yes, absolutely. I would say that it has to do a lot with developmental age. What are the students ready to do or able to do? So you would have to go to the basics of development. What is expected of the children, and take it from there. Like I mentioned before, we do have a STEM program, and they do the Lego kits, the We-Dos. They do some STEM activities, some building in the program in the after-school program, the class that I teach. It's more about play, about exposing them to the robots and coding, not necessarily to a specific. It's pretty like a free range where they're exploring more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Now, the way you are telling me, because it seems like there are multiple steps to this, and a lesson plan must be very, very complex. So walk me through a lesson in robotics, a 40-minute lesson or an 80-minute lesson, depending upon, because schools follow both models, a 40-minute lesson or 80-minute lesson. And tell us your experience, whether you follow a 40-minute lesson model or an 80-minute lesson model, and how does that lesson look like?
Well, again, it depends on the objective and how much time do we have and what do we want to accomplish. If it's a lesson, for example, for foreign language, and the same could be for any other subject areas where the goal is not specifically to learn how to use the robot or to build a robot, but to learn content, there needs to be some time devoted to familiarization with the robot, the specific robot. In the case where I used the Bluebot, the codes, learning what is expected, and sort of like the language, because in that case I was creating the language for them, using Spanish, the code language, and then some time to explore, some time to build their codes and to show. It's sort of like show and tell what they've learned. I've been in other classes. For example, I had the opportunity to teach a STEM class last summer where the goal was to build a robot by the end of the week from scratch. And the way that class was designed was where students were exposed to coding, engineering, and building, like through art. And the first couple of days, they spent some time learning the basics of coding. So they would spend some time. It was 3 teachers involved. I would teach the coding exactly with this specific app that they needed to use. They would spend another an hour or so with the engineering, electricity part of it, so that they understand the mechanics, like what's happening behind it, and then some time building. And that takes a couple of days, and then they go on to build their robots, and the teachers are facilitators.
So it means, once the robot is complete, from that point on, you move into assigning different tasks and to the same robot, and then the nature of teaching and learning at that point changes from building the robot to actually making the robot perform certain functions in different situations. So it looks like that once you have initial robot built up in the first couple of weeks, then you actually move on to the rest couple of months, and all that would be on teaching this robot to perform different functions. Is that true?
Exactly. And then depending on the goals, going back to the 21st century skills questions, if you notice, it's the teachers are facilitators, student-driven, and depending on the goals, if you tie it to global issues, this particular class that I taught, it was the setting was to resolve the garbage in a river, how to collect, this robot had to clean this particular river, and we gave them a real context because it was a real issue in a particular place. And so then, like you said, once it's built, then how can we improve it? Because, there's always going to be a problem. And so it's a matter of creating and trying and testing and trying.
Wonderful. So let's say now the next question I have is about the equity of access, equity in education. And we have a large percentage of students, especially in urban districts, who come with certain limitations and disabilities. What robots how robots can be used for students with disabilities, and how it can help bring equity in learning to those students who are learning disabled, or students who cannot learn through the regular teaching modalities.
Well, in my experience through other colleagues, because teaching special needs students is not something that I've had the opportunity to have much experience with, but what I have seen is that it helps them, just like you say, level the playing field. And for example, I've seen lessons in art where because of the limitations, in lack of a better word, that a particular student has in terms of motion or movement, a robot facilitates, the activity. So, for example, if a student cannot take or pick up a pen, a brush to paint, there are robots that come with different skins or different ways where they can dip it into the paint and then do some sort of art. So in that case, it's probably what we see the most in terms of the wonder of technology and robots is that for those students, it helps them do things that otherwise they wouldn't be able to do in the classroom.
And if I could say that the most recent forms of Alexa skills and Google Home and all that, my wife, she works as, she was an educator, part-time educator with the younger kids. And she noticed in one of her classroom experiences that one child was not doing anything. And she was trying to motivate him to finish his work. And it was a math work. And he didn't do it. And he kept, just sitting there. And then she said, all right, I'll help you, finish your work. So she sat with him. She said, this is a question. And as soon as she spoke that question, the the numbers and digits. This was a math question.
Yes.
The kid just listened to her and immediately answered that question. He wrote it down, started writing it. Then he explained, I cannot read. So,
oh, wow.
Isn't that beautiful? That
Yes.
all she did was just read the question to a math question to that kid. And the kid, immediately started writing on a piece of paper and answered that question. Yeah. So I'm just thinking that if we take Alexa or Google Home, or Google Assistant as a robot, as a speaking robot, and we can teach language arts through that, and also for those students who are reading disabled, to them, if we could read it through these devices, and that can actually bridge that gap, and that can the hole they have in their learning, I think that can be filled with these things. My pet peeve, with these devices and in public school districts is that these public school districts have put in limitations. They have blocked these devices to connect to their networks, thinking that these are insecure devices, and because you cannot enter a login and a password to connect these devices to their networks, so they are not even allowing. Instead of finding out the ways to secure the network and allow students to use and teachers to use these devices, they're putting all these limitations on teachers and students. And I think through this program, we will be advocating for those teachers who want to use technology, who want to use these extraordinary devices, especially this Google Assistant and Alexa and all those that are coming in, the voice-enabled robots, you can say, or voice-enabled devices.
Yes.
They must become mainstream. They're already mainstream in public. The first thing you wake up, and I'm pretty sure more and more households are the same. You start out with weather.
Exactly.
Okay? You start out with translations, and I believe Google Assistant has come to a point, and I with due apology, my limitation is I can't speak Spanish, and 70% of my students are Spanish. But because of this technology and the Google Translate, which now allows you to actually have a conversation with someone, I can speak my language, and it actually speaks back to that person in Spanish. And likewise, my students,
exactly.
or my teachers would speak, all the parents who come to us, they would speak in Spanish, and it will translate it to me in spoken language, not even in typing alone. It's in spoken language, it will translate it back to me in English. And with the new Google headphones and all that, actually you put the headphone on and you can start having conversation in 150 different languages.
Isn't it?
So these are the boons of technology, which are administrators, and I'm an administrator. I'm guilty of that. That I probably have not been that forceful and advocate to mainstream these technologies, and we're still limited. And these are very cheap technologies. We're not even talking about a lot of investment. So my next question, as an administrator, where do I start? If I have to start a robotics program in my district, where do I start? Where do I get the curriculum from? Where do I get the devices from? So give me a cheat sheet so that I could start, next week.
All right, cheat sheet. I go back to the objectives. What's the goal? Is it to incorporate it to teach content, or is it to teach STEM? Well, the beauty of it.
Let me help you with that. Let's say teach STEM. That would be an objective.
Well, so here's the thing. The beauty of it is that most of these robots or kits or programs and things that come for education come already with curriculum. So if you purchase you have, whether it's the Lego kits or whether it's any of the other robots, what happens, what they're doing, what the companies are doing is that you have access to material online. So they have apps because you can use then the tablet, or you have access through the internet, and sometimes you can even create, for the coding part, you can create teachers' accounts and have the students log on and conduct your classes like that, or you can have access to the materials that to walk you through what it is that you need to do. So again, if the approach is project-based learning, you will check to see that the particular robot or RoboKit is aligned to that philosophy, because that's what you want to accomplish. It's just that for me to give a list, it's a bit unfair because there's so many, but so the teacher doesn't have to do everything. The resources are there. The companies are making it available for the educators.
Can I start a robotics program for one classroom in under $1,000?
You may be able to. You may be able to. Again, class size. What is it that you're getting?
25 students.
One student. You may. I think so. Yes. I think so because, yes, I'm going to say yes, and it's just a matter of sharing if you need to share. Like, yes, absolutely. The class that I teach after school, it's I try not to spend too much, although that shouldn't be a problem, like in my particular school. And what it is just because it's exploration, there's a lot of sharing, and it's fine. Not every single student needs to have one of each of everything. So absolutely.
Dr. Collado, let me tell you, you have such a wealth of knowledge in this particular area.
Thank you.
And people can rely on contacting you through your website. I guess you wouldn't mind if they approach you.
Of course
for
not.
further advice on this and starting up robotics programs. We have in our district we have a very large population, but there is one small robotics program which is being held under the direction of some motivated teacher. But I believe that the teaching of robotics can teach our children not only the technological skills and the scientific skills. It can also teach a lot of soft skills. It can help them improve their executive functions of their brain, and in which, like you mentioned, that they learn discipline through this. They learn working with others. And these are all now the required skills employers are looking for, when they're hiring new people. So gone are the days, that you are a subject expert and, you are.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Now, you can be a subject expert just sitting in front of Udemy. And I'm all for it. You take a Udemy course or an edX course and you can be an expert in a reasonable amount of time. But you cannot be an expert on collaborating with others. You cannot be an expert, being a good colleague, a good employee, a good student, a good husband, a good wife. You cannot be all of that without learning these skills. So I'm assuming that these inanimate objects like robots can teach us human beings a thing or two in terms of living with other robots or with other human beings.
Yes, and what I would like to add is my biggest, my mantra or my rule of thumb is technology with purpose. And when it comes to the robots, I'm going to say that there's this notion of, okay, so just let's work with it or play with it, whatever the case may be, and the students will be fine. But no, because the world has changed every year. When you ask me, okay, so what are the most popular? I could give you a list, and then tomorrow it'll be a different list because they're constantly changing, and it doesn't matter if you use one brand or another. The idea, the bottom line is, what are we teaching? Are we teaching them about global issues? Are we teaching them to build character? Are we teaching them to collaborate? Are we teaching them to be able to understand how they move? Like, for example, with the executive functions, no understanding. I see it a lot with the little ones where they're like, this robot is crazy. It doesn't go, why doesn't it move in straight lines? Because they need to understand that there's a connection with what they do. with the tablet in order to maneuver the robot and what the robot does. So it helps them like that too. And that's why I insist that it's important to have these structures, to have the pedagogy, and so that we can make the most, because it's just tools.
And I'm telling you, I think, another topic that's tangentially related to the topic of robots is a topic of artificial intelligence, and the way it is discussed in academic circles and in technological circles. It sounds scary. I'm not sure if we should be scared when people like Elon Musk, people like Stephen Hawking and Bill Gates, they're all scaring us, with the possibilities that AI can bring in beyond just the benevolent use of technology. It's the malevolent use of technology that they are talking about when thinking of artificial intelligence, and it will all be done through robots, and also, the way it is impacting the society already, with Amazon initially, helping close all these stores, and now their warehouses, which initially employed, thousands of people, and now the robots can do their functions too.
Exactly. Yeah.
So sooner or later, it looks like we're going to have a lot of time at our hand. So we better be ready for that.
Exactly. And I want to be the optimistic. That's my prediction, that we will be able to simplify our lives, and we'll be able to enjoy life and live life, and worry about the things that really matter, instead of like working and living like robots.
I'm telling you, in near future, most people will have a routine and a ritual like yours. They will have plenty of time to go to the gym in the morning because all the functions will be performed.
Exactly. So I'm not that afraid. I'm looking forward to it.
So please stay with me for a little bit of post conversation, kind of a time with me for a couple of minutes. And in the meantime, I thank the audience, and I thank you also, Dr. Creado, for spending this time with us and sharing the wealth of knowledge you have on this subject. And that's why I kept this conversation for the people who are not tech savvy and advanced. We want to start. This is for those teachers who have no clue what robotics is. It's for those administrators who have heard of these things, but they don't know how to implement these things in their districts. And I believe that at least now we have a start. We know where to begin. And it could have been done, without your help. So stay with me for a couple of minutes.
My pleasure.
And we'll continue in just a couple of minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.